Okay, so welcome a lot to all of you to today's webinar. And today we will talk about clinical trial manufacturing planning. Okay. So we've seen in the last couple of days, of weeks, that a lot of known faces and other unknown faces have joined. So it's great to have this kind of mixed team that is going to attend this webinar. It's great to see you all. For the next 40 to 50 minutes, our focus will really be to cover a few topics and for you to understand what to look for when you are looking for a clinical manufacturing solution. So this is a webinar, and we realize that for most webinars, so typical attendees, they keep the webinar open, and then sometimes it goes to the background while you're replying to emails and doing your job, because I know everyone has a very busy life. Now, you have to understand that our job here is to make this session as compelling as possible and practical as possible to keep you engaged. So we've also scheduled a couple of questions that you will be able to respond to, and so it will be interactive. I'm Laurent Verdict. I'm a strategic account manager here at Inside, and I'm working from Belgium, as I said, and I'm joined today by Oriane Malburny, who is our Prediction Hub product manager. In terms of agenda for today, the first part is really for us to help you understand the landscape of the challenges that planners are facing in the clinical manufacturing space, and also what exists in terms of solutions right now. We'll also go over the typical kind of things you need to look for whenever you think about getting a solution for your clinical manufacturing planning. And then we'll go into a live demo of our tool, the Prediction app. And then Oriane will go over a vision for the future for this app, of our solutions in general, and we'll end it there. So in order to understand the landscape well, we like to start first by going over today's reality and the challenges that are typically faced. What we see on the market is that 80% of clinical manufacturing planners, well, they rely on non-specialized systems. What does that mean? That means that they rely either on spreadsheets or sometimes other tools like commercial planning systems that are not tailored to really manage the complex constraints that you need whenever you manage the supply chain and the manufacturing for clinical trials. And the problem is that those tools are usually disconnected and they lack the flexibility and robustness to really take everything into consideration. Look, the typical kind of thing that people are looking for to answer as a question when they're trying to plan for the DS, the DP, even the API for a specific program is to answer the question, okay, the trials that I've planned right now and the schedule that I've put those trials on, is this realistic compared to what I have in terms of reserved slots, in terms of number of kits to release, in terms of shelf life? Is it sufficient, or can I go faster even? This is the first question that everyone asks for, and it's very hard to manage that on basic tools. Then whenever you have changes, being able to track those changes, not only respond to them directly, but also track them over time and see how you've changed your decisions over time. This is something that we also see that is lacking whenever you're using non-specialized tool. And at some point you get to silos and poor collaboration, because when you have disconnected tools that's automatically created, or at least you need a lot of effort in order to keep the alignment between teams. And so this usually leads to constant firefighting. So that means that out of our experience, 93% of clinical manufacturing planners, well, they experience shortages. And I hope you're the lucky 7% here, but statistics are not going in your favor today. And so, of course, the primary objective of everyone working in clinical trial supply chain is to have the right product at the right time and at the right place. That's the primary objective. Now, we are living in 2025, and we see a lot of secondary performance objectives coming up. And so cost is, of course, very important for everyone there. Wastes are to be important even for DP and DS, number of batches that you have to release, team efficiency, capacity utilization, CO2 emissions, and many, many more. And so not only do you work with constraints, but you also have high expectations. So the only logical thing is to start looking for some specialized systems in this area. And that's where Insight comes in. We came with a solution that's called the Insight Prediction App, part of our Insight ecosystem. And from all the customers that are using them, there is this one EU customer that's highlighting one of the major value points, which is the fact that what they need to do in order to plan and difficult scenarios that they have to do on a weekly basis, well, usually it took them days to do them. Now they can really do that in a matter of hours. So in terms of time efficiency, that's really a game changer. So that brings us to the first questions to the audience, and so the first question is just to have an overview of what is happening out there. What are the risks, in your opinion, of non-specialized tools in clinical manufacturing planning? The four propositions are incapacity to represent demand specificities and thus have inaccurate demand forecasting, being incapable of representing the supply constraints efficiently, having poorly timed alerting, or lacking in the integrations with other systems. I'll leave you a couple of seconds here to respond. I see that there are a couple of answers coming in. So I see that most people go to the first one, the incapacity to represent demand specificities, which is definitely one of the points. And I would say actually that the second most important one is the incapacity to represent the supply constraints, because it's one thing to be able to model your trial demand. It's another to put constraints in terms of your stability plan, accurately represent your bill of material, the evolving kits that you will be using over time, the facilities that you will use, etc. Of course, poorly timed alerting is important as well. So yeah, it's I don't know if I'll leave maybe 20 seconds more for the people that haven't answered to answer here, but I think this brushes the question quite nicely. Good. And so that's where Insight comes in. Look, at some points we still need to present ourselves for those who don't know us. So what we do at Insight, we really focus on helping pharma companies and biotech companies making your clinical forecasting and planning easy and accurate. And so that's really our focus. We're not doing anything else. And so we have really developed an expertise in that space. So we deliver supply chain solutions designed for the unique needs of clinical trials. That's another way of seeing it. We work with 70% of the top 20 pharma, and you see a couple of logos there. Some of them are in the top 20, but you can also see that a lot of them are also smaller biotechs or pharma companies existing out there. So that we've been like for 25 years around, so we've also optimized like tens of thousands of trials, and that is also something you will see. So in terms of clinical trial manufacturing planning, what technology and models exist right now? I've brushed over that a little bit before, but a lot of people, they still come to us and say, hey, look, we're doing that with Excel. And as I said, some are still using commercial systems as well. And it's great to have one system that does it all, but sometimes one system that does it all isn't capable of really adapting to those specific constraints of clinical trials, and that can also bring its kind of issues. So at Insight, what we do is we provide forecasting and planning systems, not only for clinical trials, supply planning and demand planning, but then also everything linked to manufacturing planning. We provide simulation and optimization systems, and that's also something that exists in this space. And then the question is, okay, if you want to go in that direction, what kind of models exist there? Either you can do it in-house and have your people use that system or that solution, or you can outsource it. And both are something that is supported here at Insight. And then, so that brings me to the second question to the audience, also to understand a bit where you're coming from. What tool are you actually using for clinical manufacturing planning? So I hope no one is going to write down pen and paper for sure, but then we go to Excel spreadsheets, commercial systems. We have those forecasting and planning systems and the simulation and optimization systems. I see already one person going to the commercial planning systems. Okay, we see indeed that okay, no one is using Excel here right now, at least, or maybe that's the people that aren't responding. Don't worry. So people, there you go. We have one answer there. So just wanted to highlight that this is a safe space. People don't see what you're voting for. We just see the percentages. Okay, but it's good. We see that a lot of people are using simulation optimization systems. That's one of our flagship tools that is doing that as well. That's good to see. Good, and I see no one is using pen and paper. That's good. Good. Well.
Yeah, thank you.
The next part, I'll leave it over to Oriane, so our product manager for Prediction App, to go over what are the kind of things you need to see and the criteria you need to look at when you're selecting that kind of system.
Yeah, indeed. At least thanks to our experience, we would like to share with you the few important criteria that we think you should look at when you make a choice for a new clinical manufacturing planning solution. So the first one is the ability to consolidate the demand. We know that for a program, the demand can come from different sources. So you might have a trial forecasting and planning tool that generates for you some trial demand that needs to be imported, accounted for in your manufacturing planning tool. You might also have some one-off technical, quality, regulatory demand that needs to be accounted for, even if it might come later in the future, but that you should plan to produce for. And the last type of demand that we usually see is the long-range planning. So the trial did not start yet. It's planned for in a few years, but still the program is also planning quantities and capacity many years in advance. So you already need to have some estimates of the demand that those future trials might generate. The second criteria that we think is really important is the supply planning information. So here you might have, you might have some specific manufacturing constraints. So the bill of materials that you have for the product, the losses that come from it. You also have planning constraints, lot sizes that you can produce, mixing capabilities of the lots in between them to feed other lots. So you really have lots of specificities that you might want to model in the tool. Something that Laurent already mentioned, but is pretty specific to the industry, is the fact that you have stability plans. And so the shelf life of your product might need in some cases to evolve in time just because you have extensions that will happen. And that means that a lot, in fact, will be used longer than what's expected at the beginning of the program. After those constraints and those plans that you have, you also make decisions. So you fix lots, you fix allocations. You know that they happened in the past. That's what will happen in the near future. You really want to take it as a constraint for the forecast to work on. And the last point, which is important to make supply scenarios, but is also really important to manage risk, is the ability to make some scenarios. So on top of the baseline, that's what you are going to really implement. You also might want to try something out, especially if you update your demand, you spot that you have some misdemand in the program from one stage to another. You miss some products, you would like to mitigate this risk. You will make some trials and errors, and you might just want to do that on a scenario to then make the best decision on what am I going to set in place for real in my baseline. For that, you usually need some real-time visuals to see when does the misdemand happen. And once you have a super clean working plan, you might want to be able to export it, for example, in an Excel format, in which you might want to make additional analyses or share with a lot of teams that might need to have access to this kind of information. The fourth criteria that we see is, in fact, the one for which we usually see the people coming and knocking at our door is the fact that they want to improve efficiency and collaboration from their team. So if you want to improve efficiency, well, the tool should be easy. It should be easy to understand, should be easy to train people on it, and you should be able to understand what happened in the past, why did we take the decision, and where are we today? What are the KPIs that we follow? One additional value point would be that it helps you synchronize in between the teams. So we know the study leads usually handle the forecasting of the study demand. The program manager have to account for all of that. And so making this link easy in between the team is pretty important. And the last point that we see as really, really important at Inside is to be able to rely on a good support team, because using a new tool, implementing it, it's not easy. You will have use cases that might challenge you. You will have changes that will be needed, and we know change management is not always so easy. So being accompanied by a good team on top of having a good software is really important from what we see. And the last one is the ability to integrate with other systems. So more and more customers, they come to us and they say, okay, we really want to integrate as much as possible because we want to limit the manual, in fact, inputs of the users in a lot of systems. So we just want the systems to communicate. Well, for that, you need the integration capabilities. And you need those integration capabilities to be retro-compatible in between versions. Because usually we all want a tool that evolves, that adapts to the industry and the changes. But once you have made connection in between two tools, you want to make sure that whatever the changes that happen in one or the other tool, it doesn't break what was working before. So this is really something that's pretty important to account for. And the last point we have here is the ability to operate with other systems, your ERP, your dashboards, your forecasting tool. So the integration should really cover all the scopes that you might want to integrate. So in the end, it gives a pretty heavy slide. We are aware of that, and we just really wanted to make sure that we shared with you all the points that we think are really, really important to keep in mind when you make a choice regarding a clinical manufacturing planning solution. So you might have access to it afterwards, but don't hesitate to keep really that in mind when you make your assessments internally. And I will leave you in the hands of Laurent.
Thanks, Oriane, for going over these points. So I guess what Oriane was going for is also that if you want to take a screenshot of the slide as possible, but you'll be able to get access to the slides afterwards. So that works as well. I think some of you are now interested to go past all the theory and go maybe into action. So I'm very happy maybe to start sharing my screen and to go over our demo instance for the prediction app so we can show you what it's all about. So just give me a second for me to share my screen. And I think you can see my screen now. And there you go. So welcome to the prediction app, our clinical manufacturing planning tool. So the first thing you will see when you enter the prediction app is on the left side, you have this menu highlighting all the projects that you are working on. So right now, I'm looking at project 101. And this project really combines together all the trials that are sharing one specific IP, one specific investigational product that is used all the way for different types of trials with different types of indications. The first thing that we want to look at when we go into one of those tools is the way you consider the demand. Because at Inside, we believe that supply should really be demand-driven first, so everything starts there. It starts with some robust plan on what you would need for a specific study. In the prediction app, linking back to what Oriane said, you are able to either do things yourself and forecast yourself what you need in terms of IP plan for your trials, or You can connect to another system for that system to send you what you know. And so here we have different types of trials. Here, the first one is called NS001. And you see we have created two different scenarios that we will go over in the future. And so if you look at any one of those scenarios, you can see that here we've just used an external result and we've imported what it looks like. So these kind of graphs, you will see it all over the prediction app. We really want to make it as visual as possible. And this represents here how many kits you plan to release at specific points in time. So here in May 26, and then 6 months later, you release two types of kits, the active and the placebo one. So this is typically the kind of trial that you would have imported either from an Excel file or from another system, and that you can then enter into NS001. If you want to look at other types of trials, well, there are trials that you've done yourself, that you can model yourself, and I'll go over that in a second. There are also trials here that we've been able to connect to other systems. So, for example, the NS006, we've connected it to our other module that's called Lighthouse, that you might have heard of, and this is really focused on forecasting and planning for clinical trials themselves. And so a lot of our clients, a lot of our customers, they're using both systems together, and so they model the demand in Lighthouse, they push it to the prediction app, and it comes here. What I wanted to do here with you as well is just to keep a placeholder for a new trial that we will be building together. Because of course, you might have some trials that are built in other systems and that you import there, but at some point, maybe you want to do yourself a real quick test to see, well, if I have a trial in 5 years from now, and I just want to write down a couple of high-level information, would that work? Just wanted to show you, because this really shows you how quick, intuitive, and reactive the system is. If you want to create a new demand, let's call it for NS007, let's call it our first scenario. You can really already have a high-level overview of your demand just by entering a couple of assumptions. So here is going to ask me how many patients I want. So let's say I expect a trial of 100 patients. This will be starting on the 1st of January 28, and that will stop on the 31st of December 28. Go next to it, then it's going to ask me in terms of dispensing, how many visits we'll have, and say that we have 10 visits for this trial, just high level, and the patients would come back every 3 weeks, and we would provide them with 1 kit per visit. So there will be 2 treatment arms. Treatment arm 1 is going to be treatment arm active. Treatment arm 2 will be treatment arm placebo, and is going to be assigned 50-50 ratio. It's going to ask me how long it takes for the kits to be packaged. Let's say it takes a month. And let's say it takes also maybe 2 weeks, 14 days to get from the packaging site to the investigational site. So a very small study. Last thing we need to enter is, in terms of supply, what is the estimated shelf life of the drug product that will be packaged. Let's say in this case, it will be 24 months. We want to cover for 30 days of safety stock, just to make sure that if there are some delays in terms of release, we aren't facing any risk. And we want to release every 6 months, so that's 180 days. And let's keep 20% overage for now. And just here in 2 minutes time, I've written down design a scenario, and you can see how it looks like here. So we see on top of it, again, we go back to these graphs I was sharing before. On the top side, you would see the graph highlighting a monthly demand for your kits. So you can see it starts in January 28 as the kits need to be available there for the first patient to be dispensed, the first patient in. And given all the constraints that we've provided in terms of the resupply frequency, you can see that it already recommends us to release placebo and active kits by November 27 and a second batch in May 28. And that would be sufficient to cover for the whole demand. Okay. Now this is on trial level, but the real focus here of the prediction app is not on trial level. Trial level is just there in order to be able to represent the demands that you have. It's really on project level. It really depends which kind of vocabulary you use, but it would be called project level, program level, compound level, one of those. So at compound level, what we've done, I'm clicking right now, is we've combined the demand from all of the trials that I've just shown. And all of those demands, they appear here on the top screen. Okay. And they appear here on the top screen. And so what you would see here is on a monthly basis, the combination of all the blisters, the active, and the placebo blisters that you would need over the course of time. Okay. And oh yeah, now I understand. So there, I just had information that you might not see a part of it because there is the demo highlight here. So I'll also hide this so you might be able to see it better. Thanks, Margot. So on the top side, you would see the demand that is aggregated between all the trials that I've just shown you. And so if we just focus maybe on the 100 milligram blisters, you can see here what it looks like all the way from December 25, which is this month, all the way until August 28. And on the bottom side, just like we've defined some constraints for the supply of the trial, in this case, we've defined some constraints in terms of the supply for blisters, in terms of DP. And so here we see that we already released something back in November, and we'll need a couple of other lots that we need to be released over the course of time. Now, when you manage a program like this, you probably won't only be responsible of considering the DP. So in this case, the blisters, you might need to go and look at the DS, in this case, tablets. And so the supply from blisters that we've seen on the bottom part now becomes the demand of tablets. Here you start to see the demand in terms of tablets, so what you need to have in terms of supply of tablets. And the supply of tablets then becomes the demand in terms of DS, or even API, if you'd like to call it that way. Okay. Now, if we go back to our blister section and we select this, Prediction App also is very visual in the way that you can really quickly click on any one of those lots, and you can see how it will be allocated to your downstream demand. And so we have a lot here that is recommended to be produced in April 26. And you can see, for example, the first demand it's going to respond to will be May 26. And you see normally this pop-up screen appearing that says that we're going to need 1,570 blisters, and the consumer will only be trial 101. Maybe if we go here, you can see that the consumer will be trial NS 003. Okay. So yeah, this is in terms of allocation, but maybe what you'd like to see is maybe go a little bit more in detail in terms of allocation. And so the Prediction App also allows you to see how all the DS will be turned into tablets, will be turned into blisters, and in the end will be turned into the final demand of the trials. Okay. If we go back to our home page here, you can see now that, so this is an overview of the demand and the supply of our active 100 milligram blisters. But the strength of the Prediction App here is also to allow you to see in terms of, to see what you need to put as constraints to really represent the reality of what you're facing. Okay, so what we've done here in order for the Prediction App to know when it has to select the lots is to put some constraints in terms of manufacturing. So we've defined a couple of processes, sites and lines. We've defined some bill of materials that I will show you here. For example, in order to produce the blisters that we see here, we need to have 28 tablets per blister, and we considered a 1% input loss. We've defined some stability plans here, and so you can see that the DS and the tablet section have 24 months of shelf life. However, for the blister section, you can see there is a stability plan that starts to change from January 28. All of this is then taken into account, as well as the guidelines in terms of planning. And those guidelines, they just represent the lot size that you have at a specific process and line, a specific facility, the sampling that you might need, manufacturing lead time, et cetera, et cetera. So I won't go over all of these parts. You can see we can really take a lot of those constraints into account, and everything will really be mixed together in a smart way in order to provide you with a recommended supply plan. Okay. Then another point that's really, really important for the prediction app, and that brings most of its value, is the possibility to create quick scenarios and to check in immediately if some of the scenarios you might be facing will be supply friendly or if you're facing any risk. So let's start maybe at the planning stage. Maybe let's say that in terms of, again, the active 100 milligram blisters, we want to define that, well, every lot that will be released in terms of blisters will be fixed all the way until April 26th. So here, if I'm editing and defining that it's going to be fixed, I'm going to be able to see here that 2 lots have appeared. Those lots, they are represented here. So we produce 5,000 blisters for each lot, as I've shown just before, but we have 100 kits that need to be kept for sampling. So in the end, we only release 4,900 blisters. And all of this is being taken into account. But now let's consider maybe that you get the information that there will probably be some issue in April 26, and you won't have 4,900 kits. You will only have 3,000 kits. And as you can see, the whole future manufacturing plan is going to adapt based on this, and you see some additional lots being recommended to you in order to cover for that missed demand. Okay, let's go back here. But now let's say that you just received a message that the release that you had last month, is not 4,900, but it's actually, again, 3,000 kits. Well, given that your whole release plan is fixed all the way until April 26, what the prediction app will then do, given that it doesn't have any flexibility, it's just going to show you, hey, look, in February 26, March 26, you might end up with some risk appearing in your supply, in your demands, right? You won't be able to answer all of the demands happening here. And so quickly you can see, well, I can just move this around. I know it's not that easy, but just for the sake of the scenario, let's say we can. And we can move it around back in February. And if we do, then we can see that the risk of missed demand is managed. Okay. You can also see that it smartly takes into account this concept of expiry date. And so these dotted lines highlight that your DP expiry date exceeds what you would actually need in terms of expiry for your specific trials. Okay. Okay, so now just let's go back here. Let's bring this back to where it was. There you go. Let's maybe now consider that we don't want to consider a scenario for in terms of fixed manufacturing lots, but actually we want to look at the impact of selecting a different demand scenario. So what I've done is I've clicked on the studies part, and you can see here the different studies. So from 1 to 6, those that have been modeled in the past, and all of them are up to date, except the first one where you can see it's blue. So that actually means that we have another scenario that has been shared. And so we have this initial recruitment projections, but our clinical supply chain manager counterparts also has done a scenario just checking what it would mean if this trial was going a little bit faster, and if they plan to open more sites to recruit faster, right? Well, you'd like to see what it means in terms of your TP and DS plan. So let's maybe select this scenario and see what it means. Again, we've imported this different demand. You can see all those bars have changed. And you can see in terms of active 100 milligram blisters, this is still okay. We don't see any risk. Everything should be fine. However, in terms of placebo blisters, you can see that we fixed some lots as well, all the way until May 26. And here you can see, well, if you are going with this faster recruitment, you will see some missed demand happening in May 26, highlighted by this red bar here. And so this is really how our users are working with the tool. They're really doing some trial and errors to see, well, if I do this in terms of changing the lot size, what does it mean in terms of our missed demand? What if I change the demand? How does that react? And then they can really play with it. They usually even use it during their meetings that they have between their CMC planners, their clinical supply chain managers, even clinical operations. This is really a useful tool to be able to visualize all that data in a central place. Okay. But maybe finally, and I'll remove everything I've done here, finally, what you'd like to see is a scenario on the shelf lives, and you'd like to say that, well, our stability plan for our blisters, the date at which we have 36 months is not going to be January 28. I'll just select all of them. It's going to be January 2029. Let's see what that means. Okay, that doesn't make any changes because you don't have any demands back then. But let's say actually from January 26, you already have 36 months. Then you should be able to see that some of those lots change sizes and change the allocation between those lots. Right? Could even change maybe the shelf life of this first one, and you would also see some changes there. Okay. So I'll stop editing here. But at some point, it's good to see it in the graph form. But at some point, you might want to go deeper into the details of the analysis, and you want to see what it means in terms of the Excel forecast. Okay, so this is also pretty easy to do. You can export all of those data, all of this plan into an Excel forecast, into an Excel document. If you click here, it's going to download, but I actually have it open already. There we go. What you can see here is a lot of different tabs showing all the information in terms of supply, of demand, allocation, the lot size, the usage, the cost, and everything. You can really deep dive into the data. What I'd like to show you are two different things. The first one is in terms of monthly productions. So you have this really useful table that shows the different products you are working with, and then the time during which those products will be released. And so you see in February 26 is going to be a busy month, seeing that we're going to produce DS, tablets, and blisters. Right. Another thing that's pretty useful is the coverage. So you can see in terms of demand of all the kit of in this case just the 100 milligram blisters. You can see the demand evolving over time. You can see the supplies working a little bit in staircase way. And you can see that here at this very specific point in April or May 27, you don't really want to have any changes in your demand, and you don't have a lot of flexibility to push back a new release because it might create some risk. Another one that's pretty useful is this one. And in this chart, you would then see the demands of each one of your studies. So from NS001, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you can directly see which one of those studies actually represent most of the demand. And this is pretty obvious that the NS003 is going to be will have a very high need of all the products, and more specifically of the active 100 milligram tablets, right? And on the right side, you see all the unallocated quantities. Just given that you work with fixed lot sizes, at some point those lot sizes they might not be used fully to a full extent. So all of this represents the kind of flexibility you have during your trials to add maybe another type of trial at some point, because you still have some capacity that is available. Okay. So this is in a couple of minutes an overview of the prediction app. What I've done here is go over how you were able to consider the demands in different ways. So importing it from another system, just doing it in Excel and importing it yourself, or even modeling it yourself with the wizard tool of the prediction app. Then I've gone over the project, what it means actually to aggregate all of that demand. How does that translate in terms of supplies that you would need, in terms of supply plan, and the kind of scenarios that you can perform based on that. Finally, you've also been able to see the kind of Excel format, how all the data can also be formatted in Excel so that you can really play with the data and do the analysis that you'd like to do. So I'll stop sharing here and go back to our slides. And I'll let Oriane share with you what the vision is for the future.
Thank you. So we saw together where we are today with our manufacturing planning solution, but you might wonder what else is it in the mix and what do we want for the future? Well, our vision is really to provide you a full ecosystem where you can manage your clinical trials. So from forecasting and planning the demand of the trial themselves, for which we have two different solutions. One which is more helpful for standard trial to have an overview of how it's going and really follow up on a daily, weekly basis on what's happening. And another one which is really made for super important trials where it's super costly, super risky, and you need to really optimize those to make sure everything is going well. So this is what we offer on the clinical supply forecasting and planning side. Then what we saw together today is the manufacturing planning solution that we have. The idea is that those two solutions, they already communicate together because you are able to retrieve the demand from the trials you model in the forecasting tool within the manufacturing planning solution. What we would like to bring later in the mix is the ability to come back to the trial managers, informing them what has been really allocated to their trials in the end and what can they account for to work on those trials. How would that happen? Well, thanks to the Inside Lake, we really would like to consolidate and aggregate the data from the whole chain. So from the manufacturing side of things to the forecasting and planning side of things. So this is also what will help you to just talk with the same language across all our tools and use the same master data. So this anti-data lake layer is currently being built by our specific teams. In case you want to make integration with third-party systems, our vision is really that you go through this lake, fill information such as master data, information that you would like to reuse from your ERP solution to really have a common language across your tools. Or you could also come and grab some information, for example, to build your own reporting dashboards that we see coming more and more in the landscape of our customers. But still, while we have all this information about everything that's going on the clinical supply and manufacturing side, we would like to have a specific module of analytics and end-to-end reporting that, on top of the specific reporting that's already present within our different tools, makes it possible for you to see how it's going on an end-to-end level within the whole chain of information. What do we plan on doing on the prediction app side specifically? Well, we will keep the approach that we have up to now. So we usually continue to make the tool evolves in time. So we take a lot of customer feedback into account to make new version of the tool. This year, for example, we released 7 of them. And last one will come during this month. So we really try and continue to make the tool evolve based on the needs and the industry evolution. While doing so, we want to stay super agile. So as Laurent showed you, you can really, in the tool, change some parameters, change some input, and see what's the impact of it. We really want that to stay possible. So make sure that the computation still happens in a few seconds at max so that you directly have answers to your question. In order to get those answers, you need instant visibility. So the visuals that we have are pretty important. Based on feedback, we might add some new ones, but we really want you to still have those question answers to happen super quickly and directly. And the last important point for us is that the tool remains simple and intuitive. So we don't want you to start implementing and investing in a new tool, but ending up setting it in place for 3 years while not getting any value. The idea with our tool is really that in a few months, the whole team is trained and can start getting value, understanding what's going on, what's the baseline, is my current plan that I was maybe doing in Excel really safe, now that I have taken all the constraints into account. So it's really important for us that it's easy for you to get in the tool and to get value from it. And that's something that we really focus on to keep it usable, and that even while we add a lot of new functionalities, you can still keep it simple if you want. So that's it for us with the content of the presentation. Thank you. We see that you have already a few questions that have been asked. So I don't exactly know, Laurent, if how you want to handle them, but we can start answering those.
Yeah, let's go through them one by one. We have two questions for now. We don't hesitate to add others.
Yeah.
Maybe the first question is about how overages are calculated, and so what parameters are considered in this calculation. Oh, and you want to take that?
Yeah, I can take it. So it depends where you locate the overage. If you build long-range planning trials in the prediction app, for the trial demand itself, you will be able to define overage as an additional buffer on top of the demand, so an additional percentage. And then you can also consider overage that's necessary to do the site or depot seating, for example. So on the trial side of things, this is where you can add some margin to the quantities that are requested. Then at the project level, we have what we call a safety buffer, but this safety buffer is more computed in terms of time. So this is usually the time by which we will move the production a bit sooner than what you would need them to make sure that in case you have any unexpected things happening, demands that in the end a bit faster than what you had expected, you are still able to cover it. So that's really how we see it on our side for the project. Don't hesitate to add on top of it, Laurent, if you wish.
Yeah. No, I think that's clear. I like the approach. That's also what I wanted to share. There's the quantities aspect of things, and that's the overage, and then there is the time-based aspect of things, and that's more the safety buffer, and both are important.
Yeah, indeed. And you show the graph, the coverage graph that we have. Well, we have it in the Excel, but we also have it in the cockpit directly. And that's really something that helps you to see how much margin you have in terms of quantities or in terms of time, depending on the fact that you look to the horizontal or vertical axis of the graph. So this is really something you can have an easy hint about, at least.
Yeah.
So we then had a second question, which was also related to overage and buffer. So if we didn't answer it, don't hesitate to to ask more specific question. And then there is a question related to the IoT actuals. So in the tool, you might have seen that we have some recruitment actuals that you can enter in the trial, but it's really related to you will just give some information about how many patients entered my trial at a certain time, but you won't be able to give more specificities. It's really in case the recruitment curve that we forecasted by default in the tool is far from the one that you face, you can still a bit adapt what's really accounted for by the tool. But if you really want to follow up on your trial on a daily basis, make operational decisions, shipments, and so on, the Lighthouse tool that we have is really more suited for that, because there indeed you will have the possibility to integrate with IoTs, get actuals updated on a daily basis, and monitor what's happening compared to the forecast and react to it. So the trial-related capabilities of the prediction app are really there for you to be able to model a long-range planning forecast, have demand for the long term, but for an ongoing trial, it's definitely not the best of all tools to use.
Yeah, totally, exactly. So it's really the basic capabilities just for you to quickly do some scenarios, because that's really one of the added values of the prediction app. But if you want to go into the IRT aspects and ongoing trials aspects of things, we do have other solutions that are much more suited to that, and where you can really connect the IRT and see the forecast evolving over time. Look, Sebastian, if you have some other questions about that, don't hesitate to come back to us, and we can also discuss in that direction as well. Then we had one other question from Mitch, and so it's to confirm the inputs of demand into the prediction app are packaging orders from trials plus development demand plus stability. So I might start, Oriane, and then you can add something you like. So the short answer is yes. Yes, it's packaging orders from trials, right? And those packaging orders that you need in order to supply the demand from the trials are then combined together at program, project, or compound level, depending on how you call it. And then it automatically creates the DP demand that you need in order to cover for those packaging demands. Then in terms of stability and development demands, those kinds of maybe I understand the question differently from how you asked it, and don't hesitate to come back to us. But there is a possibility also to consider non-clinical trial needs. So it is one-off demands for stability purposes, for regulatory purposes, or anything else, or technical quality purposes. All of those demands can also really quickly be taken into account. I didn't go into that in the demo, but this is also possible. Yes.
Yeah, it's really lines that you can add manually with quantities, dates, necessary valid for information. So you can really specify that for each additional demand that you would have to account for, and that's not per se coming from a trial that you would have modeled in the tool or in another tool.
Good. Then I see here we're at the end of the questions we have for now. Oh, and I see you just getting back. So do the packaging order demand also include an expiration date requirement? Yes, for sure.
And in fact, we even have two of them. Usually you will see an expiration date requirement that's coming from the study lead. And we know that for them to really handle the trial super easily, they will tend to ask super long expiry date just to be sure that they are safe. But in real life, at least in our forecasting tools, we will be able also to catch what's the real last usage date of a lot. And so we will provide the program manager with both information, the ideal expiry that the study lead would like to get, and the expiry that, based on the forecasting of the optimization we made, is really necessary for the study lead to be able to exploit the lot. And so usually what's really allocated, we see, is a bit in between the two. It depends how strictly you want to respect the request of the study lead, but you might in fact take an expiry that's a bit less good, but that would still work, and discuss it with them. So that's the two kind of information that you will get at the program level.
Good. So we'll leave you with 30 more seconds, maybe if there are any follow-up questions. We have to answer them because we do have 6 minutes remaining. And otherwise, I suggest you send us any questions that you might have per email. You see them appearing on the slide here, and we can follow up those conversations later. Good. So again, I don't know what you think. Oh, there you go. To keep 30 more seconds. So Lighthouse is a separate app functioning on ongoing trials. So at Inside, we have an ecosystem of different apps that are connected together, and Prediction App is one of the, let's say, modules of them, and then Lighthouse would be another module. Lighthouse is more focused on clinical trial forecasting and planning, and so yes, given that it's focused on that aspect, it is the tool that is better fitted to also follow up on ongoing trials. Good. Perfect. Thanks a lot to all of you for having joined this session. I personally really enjoyed it, and also seeing the interaction that we've had together. Thanks a lot for your questions and for being so attentive. So if nothing else, I say a goodbye to you, good evening, good day, or good morning, depending on where you are. Thanks a lot, Oriane.
Thank you all. Goodbye.